Netflix just added a genuinely staggering collection of films to its library. Some of them landed this month. Some of them have been quietly sitting there for a while, buried under whatever original series is currently trending. But every single one of them belongs on a real, honest list of the greatest films ever made. Not great for Netflix, not great considering it's free with your subscription, genuinely, historically among the finest films ever produced. Sitting there, right now, almost completely unpromoted. A boxer nobody expects to win getting exactly one shot at the fight of his life. A cab driver in 23rd century New York who has no idea he's about to become humanity's last hope for survival. And at number 1, a 3-hour black and white masterpiece that's also one of the most emotionally devastating films ever made. 15 films. Ranked. Let's go. Number 15. The Karate Kid. A teenager moves to a new town in California and immediately gets targeted by a gang of vicious bullies trained at a ruthless karate dojo. His only ally? The quiet, unassuming maintenance man in his apartment complex, who turns out to know a considerable amount more about martial arts than anyone in town realizes. John G. Avildsen directed this, the same director who put Rocky Balboa in a ring 8 years earlier. And what he understood about both stories is identical. The fight is never really the point. The training is the point. Ralph Macchio plays Daniel LaRusso with exactly the right mixture of stubbornness and vulnerability. Pat Morita plays Mr. Miyagi, and what he does with that role changed how mentor characters get written for the next 40 years. Wax on, wax off isn't a joke line. It's a masterclass in teaching patience to someone who has none. The crane kick finale remains one of the most purely satisfying underdog moments in 80s cinema. A film that spawned sequels, a reboot franchise, and an entire generation's understanding of what a mentor is supposed to look like. A genuine classic. Still works completely 4 decades later. Number 14. The Guns of Navarone. A team of Allied commandos is sent on a near impossible mission during World War II. Infiltrate a heavily fortified Greek island and destroy 2 massive German guns capable of sinking any ship that attempts to rescue 2,000 stranded British soldiers. J. Lee Thompson directed The Guns of Navarone from Alistair MacLean's novel, and what remains striking, over 60 years later, is how thoroughly the film's practical, large-scale filmmaking holds up. Gregory Peck, David Niven, and Anthony Quinn lead a team whose internal tensions, professional disagreements, buried resentments, differing philosophies about what the mission's cost in human life should be allowed to be, give the film genuine dramatic weight alongside its considerable action set pieces. This was one of the biggest box office successes of its era, nominated for 7 Academy Awards, and remains one of the finest examples of the large-scale World War II ensemble mission film, a genre that Guns of Navarone essentially defined, and that countless subsequent films, from The Dirty Dozen to Inglourious Bastards, would draw from directly. The climbing sequence up the island's sheer cliff face, achieved with minimal special effects and genuine physical risk, remains a masterclass in practical tension building, a genuine classic of large-scale adventure filmmaking. Still thrilling, still remarkably well constructed. Number 13. Donnie Brasco. FBI agent Joseph Pistone spent 6 years undercover inside the Bonanno crime family, using the identity Donnie Brasco, an operation so successful and so dangerous that it remains one of the most significant infiltrations of organized crime in FBI history. Mike Newell directed Donnie Brasco, and what elevates it above a standard undercover thriller is its patience with the relationship at its center, between Pistone, played by Johnny Depp, and Lefty Ruggiero, the aging, low-level mobster played by Al Pacino, who vouches for him, mentors him, and comes to consider him something close to the son he never had. Pacino gives one of the most quietly devastating performances of his career, overshadowed always by his louder, more iconic gangster roles. Depp's performance charts Donnie's slow, psychological merger with his own alias, a man who starts to prefer his fake life to his real one, with a specificity that most undercover thrillers never bother to explore. What makes Donnie Brasco extraordinary is its refusal to romanticize the mafia the way so many films in this genre do. Lefty is tired, underpaid, overlooked, and the agent infiltrating his life knows exactly what's going to happen to him once the operation concludes. Based on a true story that inspired countless subsequent undercover dramas, one of the finest, most emotionally complex mob films of its decade. Number 12. The Fifth Element. In the 23rd century, a cab driver in New York gets an unexpected passenger falling straight through the roof of his flying taxi. A woman who turns out to be the physical embodiment of the one force capable of stopping the destruction of all life in the universe. Luc Besson started writing The Fifth Element as a teenager and spent over a decade trying to get the film made. A genuinely personal passion project that finally reached the screen as one of the most purely joyful, most visually inventive science fiction films any major studio has produced. Bruce Willis plays Corbin Dallas with weary, unbothered competence. Milla Jovovich plays Lilu, a role that made her a star, communicating almost entirely through physicality and a constructed language Besson wrote specifically for her. Gary Oldman plays Zorg, one of the most gleefully theatrical villains of the 90s, chewing through every scene he's given. The film is loud, strange, colorful, and completely unconcerned with being taken seriously. And that's exactly why it's held up. It's maximalist science fiction made with genuine imagination instead of algorithm-tested spectacle. If you haven't seen it since childhood, it's stranger and funnier than you remember. Number 11. Tootsie. A talented but difficult actor, unable to get hired anywhere in New York because of his reputation, disguises himself as a woman to land a role on a soap opera. He becomes a genuine star. He also, along the way, becomes a considerably better man. Sydney Pollack directed Tootsie, and Dustin Hoffman gives one of the finest comic performances of his career as Michael and Dorothy simultaneously. A performance built on genuine physical and vocal transformation, but also, more importantly, on Michael's slow, uncomfortable realization of exactly how differently the world treats him once he's perceived as a woman. Jessica Lange won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress playing his co-star and eventual love interest. What elevates Tootsie above farce is that it's not really about the disguise. It's about what Michael learns while wearing it. Every dismissive comment, every casual condescension, every moment of being unheard that he spent his whole career on the other side of. The final confession scene is one of the great comedic monologues in American film, and it lands because the film has spent 2 hours earning genuine affection for every person in that betrayal. Nominated for 10 Academy Awards. Regularly ranked among the greatest comedies ever made. Still holds up completely. Number 10. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. 5 golden tickets are hidden inside chocolate bars, granting 5 children a tour through the most secretive candy factory on Earth. Only one of them is actually paying attention to what the tour is really testing. Gene Wilder plays Willy Wonka with an unsettling unpredictability that made this film genuinely different from standard children's entertainment. He can be warm one second, cold and cutting the next, and you never fully trust him, which is exactly the point. What makes the film hold up more than 50 years later isn't the candy. It's the strangeness. The boat ride through the tunnel is one of the most disturbing 5 minutes ever put in a family film. Flashing psychedelic imagery, Wonka reciting something between poetry and a threat, no explanation given. Every child who fails the tour fails because of a specific character flaw. Greed, entitlement, obsession, arrogance, and the film never softens the consequences. This isn't a cute movie. It's a genuinely eerie fable that happens to have a candy coating. That's exactly why it survived every remake attempted since. Number 9. The Big Lebowski. After all of that, here's a film that doesn't care about plot, doesn't care about stakes, and has become one of the most quoted, most beloved comedies ever made, almost entirely because of that fact. Jeff Bridges plays the dude, a man whose rug gets urinated on by mistake, which sets off a chain of events involving a kidnapping, $1 million, a porn producer, and a group of nihilists. Sort of. The plot is, by design, almost impossible to summarize, because the Coen Brothers were never interested in the plot being the point. What The Big Lebowski is actually about is the dude himself, a man so completely unbothered by the chaos around him that he becomes, almost by accident, one of cinema's great comic heroes. John Goodman as Walter, volatile and Vietnam-obsessed. Steve Buscemi as Donnie, perpetually ignored. Julianne Moore in a performance so committed to its own strangeness that it's still being discussed 25 years later. This film was not a hit on release. Reviews were mixed. And then, slowly, over years, it became something else entirely. A film people quote daily without realizing they're quoting it. A film with its own festivals, its own religion, its own devoted following that calls itself dudism. If you've never understood the obsession, this is genuinely the moment to find out. Just don't expect it to explain itself. That's not what it's for. Number 8. True Romance. A comic shop clerk with an Elvis obsession falls for a woman on his birthday. He doesn't know she's been paid to be there. When he finds out, instead of walking away, he kills the man who arranged it, and accidentally walks out with a suitcase full of cocaine that belongs to the mob. Quentin Tarantino wrote this before Reservoir Dogs even existed. He sold the script to fund his directorial debut, and Tony Scott directed it with a visual energy Tarantino himself never quite brought to his own films. Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette anchor the film, as two people in genuine, uncomplicated love, surrounded by a murderer's row of scene-stealing supporting turns. Gary Oldman, nearly unrecognizable as a dreadlocked pimp. Christopher Walken, in a single scene with Dennis Hopper, delivering one of the tensest conversations in 90s cinema. Brad Pitt, stoned on a couch, barely moving, somehow stealing every second he's on screen. It flopped on release. $12.6 million on a $12.5 million budget. It has spent every year since building one of the most devoted cult followings of any 90s crime film. A violent, romantic, deliriously entertaining piece of early 90s pulp filmmaking from two filmmakers at the very start of defining careers. Number 7. Apollo 13. 3 astronauts are 2 days into a routine mission to the moon when an oxygen tank explodes. Suddenly, the goal isn't landing on the moon anymore. It's getting home alive, with barely any power, in a spacecraft that was never designed to survive what it's about to be asked to survive. Ron Howard directed this from a true story everyone already knew the ending to, and still made 90 minutes of the most sustained tension in 90s cinema. Tom Hanks plays Jim Lovell with restrained, professional calm. Kevin Bacon and Bill Paxton round out the crew. And on the ground, Ed Harris's Gene Kranz becomes the emotional center of the film. A flight director who refuses to accept failure as an option as a sentence that's allowed to exist in his control room. What makes Apollo 13 extraordinary is its commitment to procedure. The film trusts you to follow real engineering problems solved with real 1970 technology. Carbon dioxide scrubbers built from spare parts and duct tape, trajectory calculations done by hand, and makes every single one of those problems feel like a matter of life and death. Because it was. You know how it ends. It doesn't matter. You'll hold your breath anyway. Number 6. Lawrence of Arabia. A British officer is sent to assess the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire during World War I. He becomes something else entirely. A legend, a liberator, possibly a fraud, possibly a man who lost himself completely in the desert he came to understand. David Lean directed this on 70mm film across genuine desert locations in Jordan, Morocco, and Spain. No digital horizon extension, no green screen, just a camera pointed at actual, punishing, endless sand. And it remains one of the most visually staggering films ever made. Peter O'Toole plays T.E. Lawrence with a magnetic, increasingly unstable intensity, a performance that made him a star and defined his entire career. The film never fully decides whether Lawrence is a hero, a narcissist, or a man who simply couldn't survive the psychological cost of what he was asked to do. And that ambiguity is exactly why it still holds up as serious filmmaking rather than simple spectacle. This won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, and remains a foundational text for large-scale historical epic filmmaking, a film that Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and countless other directors have cited directly as the reason they wanted to make films at all. Nearly 4 hours, not a single one wasted, one of the towering achievements of the medium, one of the finest films ever made. Number 5. Fargo. The Coen Brothers directed this, and it remains one of the finest films they've ever made. A pitch-black crime comedy set against the flat, snow-covered landscape of Minnesota and North Dakota. William H. Macy plays Jerry Lundegaard, a car salesman in genuine financial desperation, who hires two criminals to kidnap his own wife, planning to split the ransom his wealthy father-in-law will pay, in a scheme that goes catastrophically, violently wrong almost immediately. Frances McDormand plays Marge Gunderson, a heavily pregnant, endlessly polite, and quietly brilliant local police chief investigating the resulting bodies. McDormand won the Oscar for this, the first of her 3, and her performance remains one of the most purely likable, morally grounded protagonists in the Coens' entire filmography. William H. Macy plays the car salesman with a flop-swept desperation that becomes, scene by scene, genuinely uncomfortable to watch. Here's what makes Fargo one of the greatest films of the 1990s. The Coens hold two tones simultaneously without ever letting either one undercut the other. The genuine, escalating brutality of the crime and the deadpan, almost absurdist comedy of the Minnesota nice culture surrounding it. The wood chipper scene has become one of the most referenced moments in American film history. The film that spawned it remains a masterpiece of tonal control, funny and horrifying in the exact same breath, over and over for 98 minutes. Number 4, Memento. Christopher Nolan made this for $9 million. It is, in terms of structural ambition matched by structural execution, the finest film he has ever made.
You don't remember where you've been or what you've just done.
I can't make new memories. Everything just fades.
What's the last thing you do remember?
My wife.
That's sweet.
Dying.
Leonard Shelby cannot form new memories, a condition resulting from an attack that also killed his wife. He wakes up every day knowing only what he has tattooed on his body and written on Polaroid photographs. He is trying to find his wife's killer. The film runs backwards. Each scene ends where the previous one began, so that you, the viewer, are experiencing the story with the same disorientation Leonard experiences daily. You know what he knows at exactly the moment he knows it. No more. Here's what makes Memento not just a formal exercise, but a genuinely great film. The structural conceit is not a trick. It's the argument. The film is about memory as the foundation of identity, and about what happens when that foundation is gone. About whether you can trust your own conclusions when every conclusion is built on a record you might have falsified. About the specific, terrifying question of whether Leonard is hunting his wife's killer, or whether he's become something else entirely without knowing it. The final scene is one of the most devastating reveals in cinema. Not because it's a twist, because of what it means. One of the most influential structural experiments in modern cinema, still endlessly rewatchable decades later. Number 3, Grave of the Fireflies. A teenage boy and his 4-year-old sister are orphaned during the firebombing of Kobe in the final months of World War II. With no home, no family willing to take them in, and dwindling food, they try to survive together. Isao Takahata directed Grave of the Fireflies for Studio Ghibli, and what he made is one of the most devastating anti-war films ever produced, animated or otherwise. A film that refuses every sentimentalizing convention that stories about children in wartime usually reach for. The film opens by telling you directly how the story ends. It then spends its remaining runtime showing you, in unbearable, patient detail, exactly how two children arrive at that ending. The small indignities of hunger, the specific cruelty of relatives who have nothing to spare, the fireflies Setsuko catches at night that become, in the film's most quietly devastating visual motif, a fragile, temporary source of light and beauty inside genuine horror. Takahata insisted the film not be read as simple wartime tragedy, but as a story about two children failed, specifically by the adults and institutions around them. A more complicated and more damning argument than pure anti-war sentiment alone. This is not a film for children, despite its animated format. It is one of the most emotionally devastating pieces of cinema ever produced. Prepare yourself before you press play. Number 2, Rocky. A small-time boxer working as a debt collector for a loan shark gets a once-in-a-lifetime, completely random shot at fighting the reigning heavyweight champion of the world. Sylvester Stallone wrote the screenplay in 3 days and refused to sell it unless he was allowed to star in it himself. A gamble that, against every reasonable expectation for an unknown actor with a modest resume, paid off completely. John G. Avildsen directed Rocky, and what he built from Stallone's script is one of the most purely inspiring underdog stories in American cinema, precisely because it refuses the ending you'd expect. Talia Shire plays Adrian, with a quiet, wounded shyness that gives the film's romance genuine emotional stakes alongside the boxing narrative. And Burgess Meredith's gruff, weathered trainer Mickey provides some of the film's most quotable, most beloved dialogue. Rocky won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, beating out Taxi Driver, Network, and All the President's Men in one of the more debated Best Picture wins in Oscar history, a decision critics have argued about for decades, even as the film itself has only grown more beloved with time. The training montage, set to Bill Conti's iconic score, remains one of the most purely triumphant sequences in American film, a genuine classic that still works completely 5 decades later. Number 1. Schindler's List. A businessman arrives in Krakow in 1939, intending to make his fortune off cheap Jewish labor during the German occupation. He joins the Nazi Party because it's convenient. He hires desperate workers because they're cheaper. And then, slowly, watching what's actually happening around him, something in him refuses to keep looking away. Steven Spielberg directed this in black and white, a deliberate choice that strips the film of any comforting distance, making it feel less like a period drama and more like a document. It won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay, the only time Spielberg has ever won Best Picture. Liam Neeson plays Oskar Schindler with a slow, devastating transformation. A man who begins the film chasing profit and ends it broken, sobbing, convinced he could have saved more. Ben Kingsley plays Itzhak Stern, the quiet moral center who makes Schindler's transformation believable rather than sentimental. Ralph Fiennes plays Amon Goth, a camp commandant whose casual, unbothered cruelty remains one of the most genuinely disturbing performances in film history. This film requires something of you. It is over 3 hours long. It does not soften what happened. It does not exist to make you feel comfortable. It exists because it happened, and because remembering it, completely, without flinching, matters more than almost anything else cinema can do. Netflix removed this film earlier this year. It came back on May 1st without fanfare. If you have never sat with it, sit with it now. This is the greatest film on this list. It may be one of the greatest films ever made. That's the end of today's list. 15 timeless classics, all available on Netflix right now. Now, I want to hear from you. What's your all-time favorite classic film? And which modern movie do you think will be remembered as a true classic year from now? Also, how did you like this video? Your feedback genuinely helps me make better recommendations and create videos you'll enjoy even more. And if you enjoy the video, do like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.